hoping we're live now. Because apparently we weren't before. Wouldn't be an actual stream if we didn't have some sort of drama going on, eh? Just watching the chat to see if anybody's actually talking. I'm hoping. Let's just bring this over here so I can see what's going on. Oh, hooray, we are live. Good. I am glad to hear that. Alrighty, so in the chat, I am seeing S. Mascal. Sorry if I'm pronouncing names wrong. Amaris Joseph. Catherine. Berioza. Naomi. Melissa. It's almost like Romper Room, you know. You see the little mirror going, and it's, and I see Amaris, and I see S. Mescal, and I see Berioza. Trying to keep everything in the picture here. 3. Just kind of getting back up to speed on my pattern here because I haven't had a lot of time to do any kind of knitting over the past couple of weeks, at least since the last stream, and as a result I am not as far along on this sock as I wanted to be. How are we doing? Yes, good. Okay, so what have people got to say here? Got sock cuff done, so we'll be working on the leg. Awesome. Working on a dock and finishing a blanket. A dock as in a fishing dock, a place to put your boat. Trying to finish up an endless embroidery project. I am in fear of that happening to me. I have a project I want to work on that requires having a specific print on fabric. And as I can't seem to find a fabric with that specific print, either I'm going to have to learn how to screen print it myself on potentially expensive fabric, or I may have to decide to embroider the print onto the fabric, in which case I'm going to be cutting out the pieces, I think, or at least marking out the pieces with some sort of non-bleeding ink and then embroidering the pattern onto it. And that will make this project a lot less lazy than the lazy project that I wanted it to be. So, endless embroidery indeed. Let's see here. Knitting on hiatus until cooler weather and into this embroidery skirt in progress eventually. Yeah, it's a hot day out, even here in Calgary. We've got a hot weather warning. One of my friends was kind enough to contact us this morning and say, yeah, if you're planning on mowing your yard, don't. And luckily enough, the husband mowed yesterday, so I, on the other hand, am hiding out in the basement, and hopefully the music is just loud enough to cover up the cat singing the song of her people upstairs when she starts up again. I just gave her food and closed the door. So we'll see. Let's see here. Where else have we got? Thinking of starting an embroidery project, but need my mother to post me the thread that's at her house. I've been waiting 8 months. See, I'm lucky. I can just drive over to my mom's place and go, hi, can I steal another box of DMC? Because I've stolen almost all of her DMC by now. %, humidity last week. It's better now. Ow, wow, wow. Steph Maskell. Call me Steph, but my name was never on Romper Room. See, I'm still just getting caught up. It's not you guys, it's me. Because I'm getting back in the groove of knitting and reading at the same time. How does one get started with handwork when you have problems counting and following along? I'm not going to say that that's easy. What you wind up doing is you print out your pattern and you make sure that it's a fairly easy pattern. Now, I don't know about embroidery, but I can tell you that with knitting, with cross stitch, I don't know about crochet. Crochet, I just started with very easy patterns. With knitting, you kind of just go row by row. Oh goodness, time to cough. One sec. I was smart this time. I brought water. When it comes to knitting, you just sort of go row by row. You choose a fairly easy pattern. And if you need to, use plenty of stitch markers. Use a row counter. With crochet, easy patterns and work your way up. With counted cross stitch, they have a whole bunch of new stuff that they're using these days for counted cross stitch, like pens that you can actually just wash out. And I've been noticing that as well for sewing, just generally. You'll see people using friction pens, which that's a new one by me. I had never really seen that one before. You'll see things like over at Michael's, I picked up a couple of, I guess, no-name brand pens, one of which I think fades with heat or the air. Another of which fades out if you put water on it. So if you just took a damp cloth or you steamed it, I think you can get it to go away. I think friction pens are the same way. You just apply some heat to it and it disappears. So those are some good ways to get started with counted cross stitch, you can mark out your borders, you can mark out gridding so that if you know that you have to start towards the middle of the pattern, you can mark out your middle, plunk down your hoop or your frame, whatever you're using, and you just start with one color and work your way out, really. Careful with friction pins in cold weather, the lines come back. Oh, yeah, that's not good. Maybe use the stuff that can actually be washed out. It's probably your best bet. Usually when I was a kid and I was starting cross stitch, you just use a little bit of pencil on the back side and just light pencil on the back side, and then do something like a buttonhole stitch around the edges. So that'll keep your edges from fraying. Stick it in the hoop. You don't have to really worry about it going anywhere until you have to move it. Make sure that, you know, you're not just... Start on a larger piece of paper start on a larger piece of fabric than you need, because if you have to go all the way over towards the edge, you don't want to I forgot how to word. You don't want to warp the fabric. There we go. You don't want to warp the fabric. So use a bigger piece of fabric than you need. When you're done, cut it down. Basically just use bits of paper, or you can get patterns apps these days that will allow you to isolate a line of a pattern. And if you are having trouble with it, don't feel free to just rip something out. Don't be afraid to do that. If you need to, you can always use a little bit of packing tape to get up any kind of residue of whatever you're working on. And I'm pretty sure it's almost the same with embroidery. It's learning your stitches and learning where things need to go and how you can overlap stuff. There are times when I don't like when my computer does things. I don't know if you guys are going to hear it, but there's my computer likes to chime at me when things are bringing up notifications. So you may get the odd chime from the computer or cadence of some sort. Let's see here. Decorating an Animal Crossing home. That's a cult I haven't gotten into yet. I'm still playing Stardew Valley. And got the husbeast into Stardew Valley, as well as a couple of friends. I think one of them is enough of has enough willpower to play it only when we're playing. I don't think they've really gotten into the whole... Oh, lint. I don't think they've really gotten into the whole Stardew Valley thing yet themselves. So, yeah, we have a Switch. We have not gotten into Animal Crossing yet because we only have one Switch. And the last thing we need is for me to start an island and the husbeast to say, oh, hey, this looks cool, and then get me mad because he's playing my island and vice versa. So, yeah. Learned crochet this year, so going to start doing hats for everyone for Christmas. Gonna start soon so I can try mittens to match. That is a slippery slope, Naomi. See, the husbeast likes to say that the family must really love me because anybody else gave them socks for Christmas, they'd be like, what? Because socks aren't really the kind of thing that you think of as a Christmas present. You know, you think of stuff like sweaters or what have you. And yeah, no, in my family, it's if I've got enough time to knit the socks, well, there's a core group who gets their yearly pair of socks. And then there's the folks who like socks enough and are willing to put up with me. They kind of realize that a pair of socks is actually hours worth of work. So it's not like I'm just going down to, the Walmart and buying a package of hand knit socks. I mean, it just doesn't work that way. But it's a very slippery slope because the way that I put it to people was I wanted to give them a choice as to whether or not they wanted these things. So I was like, you know what? I am not going to be upset if you don't want socks. Just if you want a pair again next year, make sure I get the packaging back. So I had picked up a bunch of these little small gift canisters from Michael's. And so if they want socks again next year, they have to make sure that the canister gets back to me. I don't think I've ever had a year when the canister hasn't come back. And I have one less pair of socks to knit this year, unfortunately. But my dad's feet just keep getting bigger. And as a result, I wind up having to knit more for him than anybody else. I have a second pair of socks on the needles right now in this bag here. Oops. In this bag here. There's another pair of socks. And even though I just finished a pair of socks for my dad, the next pair is already on the needles. Where am I? Skirt hasn't seen much progress since March. I bought fabric for a skirt last year and I still haven't gotten around to making it. Of course, it's an Edwardian skirt and I only just managed to get the corset finished, so I'm a little bit behind on that one. Beading, a type of printmaking, may be quicker if you can get the pattern carved. That might be an idea. Doing a kind of beading or stamping. I don't know. If it comes down to it, I'll do an outline and at very least, I don't know what the stitch is, but it's kind of like the loop with the... You basically make a bit of a loop and then you draw up the needle at the point where you want that sort of like... Kind of like a heart, I'm making a mishmash of it all, but you bring up your thread, you do a loop, you bring your thread down, you come back up somewhere over here, you bring the loop up. That's probably what I'll wind up doing, is I'll just do an outline of some sort. And then if I want to fill it in later, maybe I'll use some beadwork. It's been a while since I've done any kind of beading. Might be cool. I'll make it a glitzier item of clothing than it was in the movie. There we go. Let's see what's we got. And we've got Fanny here. Yay! We know it's a party if Fanny is here. Where am I? Sunday is nearly over, and I did put my knitting away to join you. If people have not seen Fanny's pictures on Instagram, you really, really need to go and look up Fanny Fadenfrau on Instagram, because I think it was a costume that you got secondhand. It was either inherited from somebody, like somebody's old project, or you picked it up at a thrift store and then totally remade it. Like pulled off all of the trim, reworked a bunch of things, and then knit a shawl to match and accent it. It's just, in the words of Rachel Maxey. So, if you're not following Fanny on Instagram, please do, because she does some beautiful, beautiful knitting work, and her sewing work just works beautifully with it. And a late hello from Kathy in Ottawa and Accidentally Steve. Heat and humidity. Wish I could drive across the Atlantic, but yeah. Until I'm fully vaccinated, I can't even fly. I've had the first of my shots, which is nice. But waiting for the second of those shots to go. This week's going to be a busy one. I've got some appointments I have to take the folks to. And having had my first shot makes that a little bit easier when it comes to the whole taking people here, there, and everywhere. It does a lot for your... what's the word I'm looking for? It does a lot for your confidence, knowing that you're halfway to fully vaccinated. There are cross-stitch patterns that are sold printed on the fabric that they wash off when you're done stitching. They're also good to start with. That's pretty cool. I remember when I was a kid, my mom had, I think, embroidery patterns that the outline was stamped onto it. I remember, I think... pardon me. I think it was the welcome wagon. Back when they still had the welcome wagon. The welcome wagon brought Mum a few craft projects or something along those lines. And I think partially it was because I think it was in the small town where my grandparents lived, my dad's folks. And so the welcome wagon brought, of course, a few household items and then an embroidery project, and it was the Count from Sesame Street, and I so wanted to play with that, and Mum would not let me, and I think finally I pulled it all apart. And I don't think anything ever came of it because she probably lost all of the stuff after I pulled it all apart. But it was pre-printed, if I'm not mistaken. And I remember her saying, "That is not what you think it is. It's not going to be simple." Bear in mind, I was maybe 3 or 4 maximum. All I knew is that I saw my mom and my grandmother knitting and embroidering and doing stuff like that. There's actually a shirt that my mom made. It's got an empire waist on it. It's from the 1960s or 70s, made out of a kind of canvas, and she hand embroidered the bodice. And it is absolutely gorgeous, and I hope that at some point I can fit it. I never have. But if I can't, I would, because I've got it in a bin in the garage, or storage room, the other side of the basement. I'm thinking what I might do is copy it and make that as a project for myself, size it up, and make my own version of an early 1970s empire waisted bell sleeved shirt. Maybe make it out of linen, because that would be nice and cool for summer. I gotta be careful, I'm gonna start talking myself into new projects. Draw embroidery patterns in plain old pencil on the fabric, non-cross stitch. Dear Windows, please stop chiming at me. And if you stitch over, it's not visible. Yeah. Yeah. 98 plus 0.0.3. Nathan, I have no idea what you were doing there. I'm still getting caught up. What is this? Where am I? Oh, I'm way back. Family really appreciates hand knit socks. Mom specializes in that, so I tend to make the hats, mittens, shawls. Very good. Always with the socks for Christmas. Socks are just a nice thing to get for Christmas because you need warm feet. Well, I'm in Canada, so obviously you want warm feet at Christmas time, and I've had people open up their socks and go, yay, and just stick their socks right on their feet right then. Those who are knit-worthy are great friends. That is true. And in my case, I have a tendency to collect other knitters. Or if they weren't knitters before, they become knitters. So I've got at least 2 other people who started knitting, one of whom used to crochet, and one of whom picked up crochet afterwards. Maybe I'm just starting a little group of handcrafters, and that's about it. Skirt is knit. Lace mohair circle skirt stasis since March. Oh. See, just gonna say, I have mad respect for, and I'm gonna botch the pronunciation of her name, I know it, Micah of Engineering Knits, because, oh, she does some gorgeous work on a very tight deadline. And, you know, you can take a look at it and go, well, it's very simple work because, you know, she's making things like petticoats and stockings and stuff like that. And it's all very simple stuff, but it's a lot of handwork. And she's doing all of this so far without a knitting machine. She did either, I think on one of her last videos, show like a sneaky peek of what I think is a ancient knitting machine. Possibly from like the 1980s or 70s. So we'll see how that helps her out, because I know I don't have one of those stashed anywhere, but Micah does some pretty awesome knitting work. So if you haven't been watching Engineering Knits, and I think she usually also puts out stuff on Sundays, if not throughout the week, you should probably check her out because she does some pretty stupendous stuff. She did one today about wearing her Victorian wrapper for an entire week, and talking at the time she hadn't finished off the stockings that she was working on because she was getting ready for a move. And yeah, I'm not knitting stockings. I will find another way to have wool stockings, but I'm not hand knitting them. Not with the size of my legs. Nope. Russian family and friends, handmade things are appreciated. A lot of the handcraft stuff I see on Instagram are Russian tutorials, so. And I think there's different kinds of shawls. Like there's a very, very fine shawl, and I can't remember the name of the style off the top. Orenburg. I think it's Orenburg lace. It's very fine shawl knitting that comes from, well, Orenburg, yes, but I'm not sure whether it's in Russia or whether it's in one of the satellite former states. This is where I admit that my geography has not been kept up since 1992, when I graduated high school. I'm sorry. Very sorry. What have we got? Sherry. Sherry from Southern California. Hi, Sherry. Canisters contain my husband's baking. These are just tiny canisters. They're very small cans. Let's see. Chain stitch. Yes. Maybe that's what I was thinking of for doing the outline of the pattern that I want to have on the stuff. See here. Mugu pattern. I'll have to take a look at that. Engineering knits are huge projects as they're done with very small needles. Yes. Micah has a tendency to work with very small needles. The needles that she used for her stockings, just, I'm flabbergasted. Like, she basically just used 2 pieces of wire. Nope. I think the lowest I've gone down is single or double zero. I haven't gone down to quad. Pastor's wife had COVID in December, got vaccinated in April, and has COVID today. Interesting. The thing with the panini, because the tubes does not like the C word. Apparently and I don't want to spread disinformation. I think that there is a tendency for it to recur. I know there are some young folks who have gotten it, have had recurring issues. They call them long haulers. It's not something to screw around with if you're going out. I probably don't need to tell any of you guys this. Wear a mask. It's just polite to other people because you're watching out for them. As well, they should be watching out for you because we're all in this together. And definitely get vaccinated. It's very possible that your pastor's wife is showing signs of having had it. I don't know. I couldn't say. I'm not a doctor. But my best wishes for her, whatever she's going through. Learning to nail bind socks. I want to learn nail binding. I also want to learn tatting. I want to learn embroidery. I just want to know all the things. There are only so many hours in a day, and I want to know all the things. Tore tendon in my thumb January of 2020, and I'm still not right. After a day of working on the ranch, some days my sewing and weaving have to come second to healing. Take care of your hands. They are the only hands you have until we are in a future where, George Lucas's droids can just reattach a new hand onto you, and you can sit there going like Luke Skywalker, take care of your hands. Knit kilt hose and worsted nice sturdy socks. That is not a bad idea, using a thicker yarn. I mean, obviously fine fabric is quite nice and is preferred, but I am not ashamed to admit that there are times when I have knit dad's socks in slightly thicker yarn because, well, he likes the warmth, and they're faster. When you're knitting socks for somebody with size 14 feet, faster is better, to quote Jeff Goldblum. It's in Russia. It's close to Siberia. I guess that's Orenburg. So yay, I guessed right. Yay. If you need help with Russian patterns, do feel free to message me. I may. There are some lovely Russian patterns out there. I kind of like the fact that with knitting and to a certain degree crochet, we're tending towards standardizing our terminology and using pictures where appropriate. I am a big fan of diagrams where appropriate. Russian knitting, some of the best in the world, and I love so many patterns in the modern crochet. Yeah. Though I seem to recall from looking on one of the book sites that Japanese crochet might be making a big splash this year, so we'll see. We'll see what winds up being a thing. I have to admit, I do have a couple of books on Latvian knitting because, whew, Latvian mittens are beautiful. Someday I would love to visit parts of Europe that, being in North America, I can only dream of going to, because in Canada it is more expensive to get a flight to Ottawa than it is to get a flight to the UK. Well, when the flights are working. But even so, a flight to the UK, when the airlines are taking you there and the borders are not closed, is also prohibitively expensive. So it's not like people just, I find it interesting because I've had friends who've studied in Europe, and they'll be like, oh yeah, we just took a weekend and went to Italy, and it's like, really? Because for us, it's even, a big deal just to slip over the states to go, slip over the border to the States, when things are working the way they should. Can get another variant that vaccination doesn't cover, but even then it will generally be milder than without vaccine. Yeah. It's one of the reasons why there's such a push for everybody getting vaccinated as soon as possible, is because variants are starting to crop up. And I'm hearing that it may just be like the flu going forward, that you get a flu shot every year and it'll be for panini. Books written by a physiotherapist and helps you knit if you are injured. Yes. Benefit of costuming in early periods and more Eastern Europe means thicker yarn socks were the norm. Yay for thicker yarn socks. And my dad's not doing any kind of costuming, but I'll remember that for myself, that's for sure. Japanese knitting and crochet is diagrammed for the most part, so relatively accessible without language knowledge. Yeah. It's interesting because there's a project that I want to start filming soon so that it will be available for mid-August. Because I like... Sorry if I'm touching these things. I like crafting mysteries. So the Shetland wool scarf that I made last year was awesome in that it was just a pattern in a book that didn't have a picture. It was, I think it was published in the 1870s, didn't have a picture, and it was just listed as a Shetland wool scarf. And that's it. No other identifying information. But, you know, because of course I'm thinking, well, we use scarf these days for everything from a shawl to just a rectangular piece of fabric that you stick around your neck. So what is it? And I put it together and it was like, ooh, this is nice. And then realizing that the terminology that was used could have possibly been a group of patterns that were either taken from a specific knitting guru of the time or, you know, just in their style, was kind of cool to discover. Well, there's another pattern that I was looking at where the picture in the, I guess, brochure, booklet, is this ornate, beautiful thing. And it gives you 3 lines of instructions. It basically tells you how to make the little ring in the center, and that's about it. And everything else is according to pattern. But the pattern is not included, at least nowhere that I have been able to find it. And yet I have found, I've found what looks to be somebody else's take on it elsewhere. So what I'd kind of like to do is to take the picture that's in the original booklet from the early 1900s. So this is somewhere around, I think, 1906 to 1910-ish. And I'd like to actually blow up the picture and try to determine all of the stitches and chart it out somewhat as if it was Japanese crochet. And then from there, make my pattern and then compare it to the more recent looking ones that I have seen online and see whether or not somebody else is kind of used the original pattern as inspiration for the one that they are now known for. So if you go on to Ravelry, for instance, if you're able to, and because some people are having trouble with the interface, if you go on to Ravelry and you look it up, if you do it any way that's even slightly different, people refer back to the one that has all the printed out information. And if you don't attribute the pattern to that person, they get kind of salty. It's like, I'd kind of like to see whether maybe this person has been given credit for something that they really actually didn't design. That and it's not really their fault. It's not like they're taking credit for the fact that they have an actual pattern made for the object, and everybody else is, you know, kind of giving them the whole credit for it and referring others to make sure that that's where the credit goes. But it's one of those sort of knitting, crochet, crafting mysteries that I'd kind of like to explore. I love these sorts of little things. Coughing. The water is helping. I'm not coughing as often as I usually do. There we go. What else we got here? Those aren't socks, they're space stations. Japanese patterns are brilliant for those of us who are visual learners. Yep. Driving to Edmonton just isn't the same. I try not to drive to Edmonton when I can. I am waiting for the beautiful day to come when Hyperloops are widely available. Cough. There we go. But yes, I am waiting for the day when the Hyperloop is available to go from coast to coast and can if you don't know what a Hyperloop is, it is a very high-speed rail that would allow you to go from, say, Vancouver to Toronto in a couple of hours. Instead of the week that it usually takes for you to drive there. So if you wanted to go to Florida for vacation, you could do that in a couple of hours. The biggest thing is probably going to be if they decide to Hyperloop the Atlantic crossing or the Pacific crossing, in which case that could be very dangerous because of tides and water. But I think that it would be nice to be able to get onto a train in Calgary and be able to make it to Lethbridge in 15 minutes. That would make it a lot easier to get to Edmonton if you really need to go there. And I really shouldn't be taking the piss out of Edmonton because, you know, it's a nice enough place. I've lived in Calgary long enough that the friendly rivalry between the two cities is fairly well ingrained by now, though I did live in Yellowknife where the only Southern TV that you got that wasn't an American affiliate was out of Edmonton. So that's where you got your local news, so to speak. I've lived in some very interesting places. Have to go cook for the family. Yeah, sorry about that, Amaris. You drew the short straw on that one. Of course, I think I'm cooking for our family tonight, and it's just the husbeast and I and the cat doesn't get a vote. Historically, I believe a girl's family and friends would knit swatches in a long scarf like samplers so the girl could have her own stitch dictionary. I would not be surprised. There's... trying to remember the name of Elizabeth Zimmerman's friend who made the seminal stitch dictionaries. And I think she probably got quite a few of those dictionaries off of similar samplers. But personally, I am a big fan of looking at really old knitting books. Archive.org has some absolutely fabulous knitting dictionaries, or rather knitting books. I really need to go through in more detail at some other point in time. These days I just sort of browse through and go, I wish I had the time to make that. I need to get better about my time management. Let's see here. Hint for embroidery, set up several needles of threads at a time. The stitching goes faster than also with chain stitch. Don't bother with a hoop. Pin the opposite end of fabric to a pillow instead. That's a good idea. That might actually make it go a little bit faster so that I'm not having to worry about a hoop. The more I think about it, the more I think that maybe, yeah, using a nice kind of glittery, glamorous thread and embroidering the design on might actually be a better idea. And it would allow me a little bit more choice when it comes to what thread I actually want to use. Or rather, what fabric I want to use. Because it's not exactly a hard outfit that I want to make, but I think that the garment in particular would kind of make or break that particular costume, because it is a very recognizable costume for folks of a certain age. There are two costumes from the same movie that I would love to make, one of which is... it's a little beyond me, and I don't know where I would wear it, because I don't have a lot of storage space for costumes. And it's very modern, it's very 1980s, so... it's the kind of thing that if I wind up actually losing a bit of weight, I'd prefer to do it then, because it will be a little bit more suitable, a little bit more fabulous, take up a little bit less room in the closet. But the costume I'm thinking of will actually blend with my day-to-day wardrobe, so... that's the one I have a feeling I'm going to work on sooner. And then I've got other projects that I have on the go. There's the ongoing Edwardian, because it never hurts to know how your great-grandparents dressed. And I've always been curious about, I guess we'd call it medieval times, but pre-Tudor, pre-Renaissance. I've probably mentioned it before, but my parents had a subscription to National Geographic when I was a kid, and I am endlessly fascinated by eras that are, well, I've done a Renaissance outfit-ish, but I'd like to explore before that time, because of course I grew up with things like the Pompeii issue and Herculaneum issue of National Geographic, and I have watched so much Time Team, it's not funny. I need to scroll back. As an Edmontonian can confirm, we may not have a great zoo, but we do have a cat cafe with delicious lattes. Next time I'm on my way up to Yellowknife to see my siblings' family. Sorry, I try to actually use sibling and nibbling, not necessarily because it's politically correct, but because it also allows some privacy, which is something that the internet does not afford a lot of these days. But no, next time I go up to see my siblings' family, I think maybe we'll have to stop in and see the famous cat cafe. That's not me. That's not me being facetious or making fun. It's pure appreciation right there. I think that's great. Let's see. Further north, originally too, just Russian further north. St. Petersburg. Ah. See, I grew up in the 1980s when most of our images of Russia were Cold War era. So as a result, one of the biggest memories I have is seeing people standing in line to go to see the first McDonald's. Because that's just when I grew up. Media is a weird thing. I would love to actually go see Russia someday. I would like to see the art. I would like to see the handcrafts. I'm not too worried about the weather because, you know, it's probably just like Canada, to be very honest. Wish we had better train service in the central U.S. You know, that would be cool. It would be nice to be able to just, a friend of ours loves the idea of, having, I guess, a North American version of ye olde sleeper cars, etc., which we don't see quite as much anymore. In Canada, at very least, they have gotten rid of a lot of the rail lines. I don't know whether it's because people aren't traveling as much by rail anymore or whether it's more inconvenient. But I think they would like to be able to go coast to coast more often or down to the States more often on trains. I think that would be kind of cool. And being able to visit the Midwest and actually see the cool things about the Midwest, because everybody sort of glosses over them in favor of the coasts. And while coasts are cool, there's only so much water you can look at. And just interestingly enough, because of course growing up in Canada, everybody makes a big deal about Toronto. They make a big deal about Vancouver. And you'd almost think that places like Winnipeg don't exist. When they talk about the prairies, they talk about how flat it is. And the thing is that the prairies aren't flat. Some parts of it are. But you get places like, I think it's the Capel Valley or the Powell River, where you've got these beautiful river valleys that you'd think that you were in the middle of Ontario. And you've got parts of Ontario that are just absolutely gorgeous, but they aren't Toronto. They're maybe up on the Ottawa River, outside of Ottawa, nowhere near that esteemed metropolitan area at all. I mean, there are some really lovely places, and I've been some lovely places in Quebec. I haven't yet managed to make it past via Quebec. I'd like to at some point get to the Maritimes. I think if the husbeast had his way, we'd move out to the Maritimes at some point, because he wants to see water that isn't overcrowded, because housing costs an arm and a leg in British Columbia. And the big dream for most of the people around our neighborhood here is to move to British Columbia. So you risk just basically being in an enclave of other Albertans if you move to, say, Kelowna, which is the interior of BC. So I think he'd like to go farther east. I've lived in the Northwest Territories, which I have a feeling parts of Scotland probably look like. And there's some absolutely gorgeous terrain up there. There's a set of waterfalls that are just, magnifique. So I am pretty sure that there are parts of the interior of the United States that are just as gorgeous and just as beautiful and just as overlooked as the parts of Canada that don't have a subway, or don't have a huge national government seat. There are a surprising amount of knitting stores in Calgary. I say surprising because you wouldn't think that this place would have upwards of 4 or 5 yarn stores. And I say that because I've gone to places like Toronto, and about the only places I hear about with yarn are things like the Purple Pearl. I'm not sure if it's still there. I think it was the Purple Pearl. Might have been the Black Pearl. And then there's a Romney Wools on Queen Street. And there might be others, but they kind of get eclipsed by those too. And I've gone to other cities in Western Canada. But for whatever reason, Calgary seems to have the most yarn stores. And I'm happy with that. Maybe that's what I should do, is retire to the Yellowknife in the Northwest Territories and open up a yarn store. Thank you, Windows. I just needed you to chime in my ear. Naomi is off for the night. Good night, Naomi. What time is it? It's 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Goodness, I've been at this for an hour. Lived in Anchorage for a few years. The North is amazing. The North is amazing. Would I live in Yellowknife again? Heck yeah. I enjoyed it. It's a nice place. Good people. My high school art teacher was in a band that used to play at one of the local pubs. And because I grew up in Ontario, where they were trying to phase out grade 13 and the rest of Canada had grade 12. And because I wanted to go back to school in Ontario at the time, I thought that I needed to stay an extra year at school. And I wasn't prepared for what they call departmental exams. They're like big exams that you take at the end of the year here in the West. And you only take them in grade 12, if I'm not mistaken. So, never been great at math. So I decided to not take my math departmental, which meant that I had to take math in grade 12 again. So I stayed back an extra year and took it easy. I took extra courses, stuff that I was just interested in. Worked part-time in the school library, which was fun. Trying to figure out where I was going with this. But the fact of the matter is that the North is an absolutely beautiful place, and even though I was... Oh, right. I was about a year older than some of the students that I was at school with. So that meant that I could go to the pub on a weeknight and see my art teacher's band play. And the funny thing is that I'm a person who tends to look a bit younger than they actually are. So friends of mine figured this out right quick And if they wanted to go to the bar, they'd make sure that they took me with them. So I would get carded, and they wouldn't. So here I am, 18 or 19 years old, walking into a pub in Yellowknife, getting carded, even though, you know, the guy at the door knew who I was. And a couple of 15-year-old friends would just happen to sneak in beside me. Didn't say I approved of it, but it's what happened. Not only is it always late by hours, it's slower and 4 times the cost of flying, which I don't do, and everywhere I want to go, I have to go through Chicago to transfer. Retired military, lived everywhere too. Yeah. My parents were artists. You go where the work is when you're an artist. Chain stitch pillow method is traditional for Russian traditional embroidery. Villages didn't have hoops or frames as easily available in 19th century and earlier. That's good information. That's cool. I am way behind in the conversation. Looking at a pattern on Ravelry, and it refers to steeking. What on earth is this? Steeking is a Norwegian method where you knit in the round, but then you cut it open. Yes. Basically, you knit a piece, you stitch around it so that you don't lose your live stitches, and if it frays, it just sort of felts, and you cut it. So you would knit a tube, and instead of knitting armholes for your sweater, what you would do is you would use a sewing machine or hand stitching, and you would stitch down the area that you want to actually cut open for the arm, and just snip snip, use a pair of scissors. That's it. Cutting a garment knitting in the round technique I find rather scary and have not yet tried. Yeah, quite a few people find it scary because you go to all that work, right? It's like so many people. I watch my mom, who loves European color work. She does a lot of things like Lopi. She really likes Lopi sweaters. And I think that she doesn't use any kind of steeking techniques because it would probably break her heart if it didn't work out properly. If you're going for late antiquity or late Roman, you'll learn how to hand pleat and pin yardage in artful ways. I haven't yet decided to go for any kind of Roman stuff, though that might be nice and cool in the summertime. If linen wasn't so darned expensive, I would probably use a lot more linen. Because as it is, the shirt that I'm wearing, it's lovely. I like it. It's really nice and cool. And even here in the basement, I'm only wearing one sweater. Usually I have to wear like 2 because it's that chilly down here at times. I've got another sweater over there. I can feel the polyester in this. I can feel the plastic. It's kind of squeaky. It kind of reminds me of the yarn my grandmother used to use back in the early 80s. It's like the kind of yarn that knitters refer to when they think about old acrylics and how plastic it felt. Is you can actually rub the fabric and feel a kind of squeak to it. So this Torrid shirt, or shirt from Torrid, it and most of the other shirts from Torrid that I have that are in my size have a large plastic or elasticated quotient to it. And it would actually be really nice to replace some of those shirts with real linen shirts. And then if my dimensions change at all, I can either let it out or put it in, take it in. So that is something that I think I'm going to consider for the future, is making the investment in some linen so that I can make some nice shirts that can go into rotation. But I don't know about late Roman. I am kind of curious about supportive kirtles of the, I guess, 1300s to 1500s. There's I think it's the Langberg. I think they call it the Langberg or Langenberg bra. That is basically a supportive kirtle with bust support. That would be useful. Might be something that I try to figure out. But I want to get the bulk of the Edwardian stuff done, or Victorian stuff done, before I switch time periods, because I don't want to give viewers whiplash, so to speak. Similar to Canada, weather-wise, St. Petersburg lately has been rather on the warmer side in the winter. Summers can be nicer, can be all drizzle. Yeah, Canada has been very similar. Either we get a really harsh winter or we get a mild winter with a lot of snow, a lot of drizzle. Coasts are cool, not just due to the water. We have jerk seagulls and subway rats too. Seagulls are rats with wings, same as pigeons. Yeah, we get a lot of seagulls out here, strangely enough. Dad married a Scotswoman and he used to tease her by noting how many places in Scotland were named after places in Canada. That's true. I mean, what Scots person can forget the grand old country of Pakenham, Ontario? I live in the capital of Australia and I only know of one knitting store. It's more everything fiber. You'd think that in Australia you'd have more yarn and fiber due to the sheep industry. Or has the sheep industry diminished? For a city with this many people, New York City has relatively few yarn stores. I don't understand that, but then I think the huge knitting craze has kind of gone over the hump. Maybe knitting has jumped the shark, so to speak. Nebraska, where our state motto is, it's not for everybody. Don't get me started on state mottos. Don't get me started on Canadian mottos. I live in Alberta, and a good portion of us right now are very salty with our premier. There's a place in Ontario that's good for linen, great product and not too expensive, not cheap, but 100%. Fanny is off to bed. Good night, Fanny. It's been good seeing you. Linen can be gotten on a good deal in the garment district. Yeah, unfortunately my garment district is very small. And I hate to say this, but shipping to Canada is prohibitive, cost prohibitive. Being landlocked in Alberta as well, I once innocently asked my dad, where do the seagulls come from anyway? And he looked at me like an idiot and said, from the mommy seagulls, dear. Oh, thanks, Dad. Better just to call them gulls and take the whole sea out of the equation, eh? Stepping away from the keyboard to knead bread. Bread? I need to make some bread at some point. Now, for anybody who may not remember this yarn, I keep changing which camera is the focus camera on my hands. Last week it was the camera right here, or last time it was this camera here. And no, this camera was the face camera, and that camera was the camera over my hands. This is actually a better camera. So I figured it might be worthwhile to try it over the hands. Lost my train of thought again. Live in Charleston, South Carolina. We have no yarn stores. That is a crime. I think there should be yarn stores everywhere. Makes me wonder if Yellowknife has a yarn store, and if not, maybe I should open one. Tough few years / decade for the wool industry there. Drought, bushfire, COVID, rodent plague. I am so very sorry to hear that, because from what I seem to recall, Australian wool is quite well prized. Oh, what names is Arlene supposed to name? We have Arctic terns here all year round. I don't have the heart to tell them they're lost. See, I lived in Yellowknife, and I don't recall Arctic terns all that often, but I do remember ptarmigan, and they are either the silliest birds ever, or they are the smartest birds ever. They are big and floofy, and they are fat birds. They do not fly so much as waddle, and it's absolutely funny because they have figured out that if they just stay put, chances are pretty good you're just going to walk right by them and not even notice that they're there, at least in wintertime. And they have a drab color in the summertime, so they try to sit in the underbrush and just let you go by. And when we lived in the Northwest Territories, we had 2 dogs, one of whom was going blind, and the other one was losing her hearing. But both of them had really good sniffers, and I can remember at one point the younger of the 2 going outside and just, running down the steps, and there's this flock of ptarmigan in the driveway. And normally birds, if they see like a Springer Spaniel coming at them full tilt, would just, they'd fly away. And this flock just saw Tiffany and kind of went, yeah, no, we're good. So Tiffany hears, or rather smells birds, nose goes directly to pavement, and she can't see them. She can sure smell them. And, next thing you know, she's sniffling along the ground, and the birds are just, staying a few feet just out of reach. They're like, nope, this isn't a problem. We'll just stay a couple of meters ahead of the dog. We'll be fine. So yeah, dog heading down the street, herding a bunch of ptarmigan. It was beautiful. Pure Linen Envy, Ontario, Canada. I'm going to write that down. I've got a pen. Where's my cool looking pen? There's my cool looking pen. Pure Linen Envy, Ontario. Check for mail order. Hopefully it's not too cost prohibitive. And I will tack it to the Mac. There we go. Yarn is out walking around in the pasture. Fleece is going to the mill next week. Woohoo! There is a woolen mill here in Alberta. At some point I'd like to actually go and take a boo. I think it's called Custom Woolen Mills. There actually might be a couple of mills. Might be something to do. Honestly, the worst birds in existence. Canadian geese that are pretty bad. They attack people. Yeah, that's Canadian geese. See, people wonder why Canadians are so good and Canadian geese are so bad, and it's because they are the avatar of all of our angst. We just put all of our aggression into the geese. Sorry, not sorry. I am going to finish this round, and then I think, it being 3:26 in the afternoon here in Calgary, I think I will leave it at that for the day because, well, it's fun to hang out, but I also have some chores I need to get done. I also have a set of Edwardian undies that I need to work on too. I'd actually like to have the video out for next week. I've got a couple of other projects sort of on the sidelines as well. I'm trying to batch a few things together so that I can get a little lead time on the next step of the projects. Which would be nice. Swans are aggressive too. One of my friends got beat up by one. Yeah, swans are pretty bad. One of my favorite movies is Hot Fuzz, with Simon Pegg and Nick Frost. And they have a whole section about a swan. It's a run-on joke. And yeah, the things that they do to try and get that swan back is hilarious. But Kathy's just Canadian geese equal cobra chickens. Yes. Do not like cobra chicken. Swans are aggressive. Yep. By all. Gotten some good work in today just hanging out listening. Yay! I'm glad that you were able to get some stuff done, Kat. Catherine. Just the one swan then. Exactly. But I think that is where I'm going to leave things today. It's been great hanging out with everybody and chatting and just not doing too much of anything. I was going to try doing the CostTube 21 questions for 2021, but I left that on the other computer. And yeah, that doesn't help at all. So If you are not a subscriber and you'd like to, just hit the little red button. If you enjoyed what was going on today, hit the little thumbs up. And yeah, I'll talk to you probably next week. Bye-bye.